Revelation 11, 1 to 14, commentary. Verses 1 to 2, the measuring of the temple. The act of measuring the temple, altar, and worshipers signifies divine ownership, preservation, and distinction. This is not a literal architectural survey, but a symbolic delineation between what belongs to God and what is given over to judgment. The temple here reflects the covenantal center of worship still standing in the first century context, indicating that the scene is anchored prior to its destruction. The outer court being left unmeasured and handed over to the nations points to impending judgment upon the visible earthly system that had become corrupt. The 42 months represents a defined period of covenantal transition, corresponding to the final years leading up to Jerusalem's fall. It is a measured judgment, precise, purposeful, and limited. Verses 3-6, the two witnesses. The two witnesses symbolize a complete and sufficient testimony established according to covenantal law by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Their identity is best understood corporately rather than individually, representing the faithful prophetic witness of God's people during this transitional age. Clothed in sackcloth, they embody mourning and prophetic warning. Their authority mirrors that of Moses and Elijah, not as reincarnated individuals, but as representatives of the law and the prophets, the full testimony of God confronting an unfaithful generation. Their power to shut heaven, turn waters to blood, and strike the earth with plagues emphasizes that their message carries divine authority. The judgment they proclaim is not arbitrary, but rooted in covenantal accountability. Verses 7 to 10, the beast and the death of the witnesses. The beast emerging from the abyss signifies a persecuting power permitted to rise against the faithful witness. This aligns with the intensifying opposition faced by those proclaiming the completed work of redemption and the end of the Old Covenant order. The killing of the witnesses represents the apparent silencing of truth. Their bodies lying in the great city, symbolically called Sodom and Egypt, identifies Jerusalem in its fallen, apostate condition, morally corrupt and spiritually oppressive. The reference to the place where also their Lord was crucified confirms this identification. The celebration over their death reveals the hostility of that generation toward the message of fulfillment and transition. The witnesses had tormented them, not physically, but by exposing the reality that their system was passing away. Verses 11-12, resurrection and vindication. After 3.5 days, the breath of life enters the witnesses, and they stand again. This resurrection imagery reflects divine vindication. What appeared defeated is revealed as triumphant. The short period of death underscores that the suppression of truth is temporary. Their ascension in a cloud echoes the language of divine approval and exaltation. It signifies that their testimony is confirmed by heaven itself. Their enemies witnessing this event highlights the undeniable nature of this vindication. Verses 13-14, the earthquake and the remnant. The great earthquake represents a decisive covenantal shaking, the removal of what could be shaken so that what remains cannot be shaken. The fall of 1/10 of the city suggests a significant but partial judgment, leaving a remnant. The survivors giving glory to God indicates that even in judgment, there is recognition of divine authority. This is not necessarily a full transformation, but an acknowledgement forced by the weight of unfolding events. The declaration of the second woe passing and the third approaching signals the rapid progression toward the climactic conclusion, the full removal of the old order, and the establishment of what cannot be shaken. Summary, insight. This passage portrays the final testimony against a system nearing its end. The measuring distinguishes what is preserved from what is judged. The witnesses embody the fullness of God's prophetic voice, rejected, but ultimately vindicated. Their death and resurrection dramatize the temporary suppression and ultimate triumph of truth. The shaking of the city marks the irreversible transition from one covenantal age to another, where the old gives way to the fully realized new.